She demanded I leave her house. The next morning, she learned it was mine. The rain came down hard that evening, turning the grand Oak Ridge driveway into a slick mirror, reflecting the towering oaks and the mansion's glowing windows. Morgan Carter stepped out of the bus, her worn suitcase rattling in her grip, soaked through her faded yellow raincoat. She glanced up at the familiar stone steps leading to the ornate front porch and felt a flicker of hope. Tonight, she thought, maybe things could change. 2 jobs, nearly endless shifts, and a mountain of student loans behind her, whatever it took to prove she deserved a place here. Almost before she could reach the carved wooden door, it swung open. There stood Tessa, her half-sister, framed by the bright foyer's warm light like a queen at court. Tessa's smile was sharp and tight, her arms folded as if to block Morgan from entering. Around her, well-dressed guests sipped champagne, their chatter quieting as their eyes flicked toward Morgan's dripping figure. "Looks like you're lost again," Tessa said with false sweetness, voice easily heard over the sudden hush. "Maybe you should take your baggage somewhere else. We'd love to start our actual dinner without interruptions." The word baggage lingered in the air with cruel double meaning. Morgan's cheeks burned. The guests shared quick, pointed glances, half amused, half judgmental. She gripped her suitcase tighter, the damp leather creaking under her fingers. No one stepped forward to offer help, no hesitant welcome, only Tessa's sharp gaze. Under her arm, Morgan could feel the edge of a manila envelope, its bold label slightly soaked but still readable. Residential transfer, Carter Holdings. Her grandmother's messy handwriting framed the title. A reason for Morgan's presence here that could shake this cold evening to its bones, if only anyone knew. "Maybe you didn't get the invitation," Tessa added, voice dropping as if sharing a secret, but loud enough for everyone. "This isn't a charity event." A few guests smirked quietly. Morgan's throat tightened. She fought the impulse to shrink away, to vanish into the mist, falling over the wide lawn behind her. Yet the envelope burned her side with silent promise. That paper held a key, a claim not tied to charm or social grace, but something real, something legal. She swallowed against the lump in her chest and forced her voice out. "I'm just here to see something that belongs to me." The words sounded small, but inside they steadied her like solid ground. Tessa's lip curled in disbelief. "Belongs? Don't play the fool, Morgan. You know nothing about what goes on here." Her laughter echoed faintly, cold and cutting. Morgan glanced past Tessa into the golden glass chandeliers, the rich mahogany walls, and the long dining table set for a celebration she was barred from joining. The yellow coat felt heavier, soaked not just with rain, but with all the unspoken doubts and whispered judgments she'd carried this far. But the label on that envelope flickered in her mind, the promise that tonight was more than a dismissed guest's last stand. Tonight could be the spark that changed everything about her place in a family that barely saw her. Taking a slow, deliberate breath, Morgan stepped past Tessa's blocking figure and into the house, not invited but undeterred. A low murmur rose behind her, curious and wary, eyes watching, and the envelope in her hand reminded her, sometimes the quiet power of paper could roar louder than a room full of whispered scorn. The kitchen was a quiet refuge, away from the bright chatter and clinking glasses in the grand dining room, but it was tinged with its own bittersweet tension. Morgan leaned against the cool countertop, her damp yellow raincoat sticking to her skin, eyes avoiding the polished marble surfaces that gleamed under the dim fixtures. A heavy silence settled between her and Mrs. Delaney, the housekeeper who had quietly served the Oak Ridge estate for decades. The woman's face was lined with years of both hardship and loyalty, her gaze gentle but firm. "You might want to slip out the back," Mrs. Delaney murmured, her voice barely above a whisper, reaching out to gently clasp Morgan's shoulder. "For now, at least, no need to draw more eyes than you already have." The suggestion was laced with unspoken compassion, protecting Morgan from more stinging glances, yet also a tacit admission that she doesn't fully belong here. At least not yet. Morgan's heart sank again, but she gave a slight nod. The words cut deeper than any insult in front of the guests. This kitchen exit was not just a physical path, but a metaphorical reminder of her place beneath the polished veneer of Oak Ridge's social circles. From across the large island, Chase leaned casually against the marble countertop, a drink in one hand. His easy grin was dismissive as he caught Morgan's eye and smirked. Some folks really get confused between charity and invitation. His voice carried a teasing public sting, loud enough for the kitchen staff and the few lingering guests to hear. Morgan's cheeks burned anew beneath the yellow hood. She hadn't just been rejected. She was the topic of sideways jokes and laughter whispered over crystal glasses. This wasn't a subtle exclusion anymore. It was a spectacle, the social verdict marking her an outsider who lacked the pedigree, grace, the right to belong here. But just as the cold threatened to overwhelm her, Mrs. Delaney remained by her side, unwavering. "Tomorrow's the big day, right?" she said, voice worn that tinged with urgency. "Don't let him get you." The words struck a chord deep inside Morgan. There was a battle coming, something more than strained smiles and clipped conversations. Morgan's gaze lifted, searching the kitchen's narrow window overlooking the moonlit garden. The same garden where she had spent afternoons learning about her grandmother's plans before the estate's future was clouded by family fractures. Whoever designed that transfer clause had planned for this moment, a rightful claim that wasn't about wealth or status, but legal truth. The kitchen clock ticked, a soft reminder that time was moving fast, just hours until whatever was to come. Morgan inhaled deeply, tasting the faint aroma of fresh bread and herbal tea that Mrs. Delaney brought. Delaney had prepared earlier. It was a small comfort, a quiet promise that not all here served cold judgments. Despite the sting, Morgan felt a faint surge of clarity. She wasn't alone. The old house whispered secrets, and within the walls, there were allies waiting, even if hidden by shadows or prejudice. When she finally turned toward the back door, slipping past polished silverware and glittering china, her wet footprints marked a trail that for now was still hers to claim. Tonight brought embarrassment and whispers, but tomorrow held the chance for truth to break through. The moment when dignity might finally speak louder than a crowded room's cold indifference. If a moment like this ever hit close to home, I'd love to hear how you found your way forward. Morgan sat on the creaky mattress of the rundown motel, its thin walls doing little to hush the distant hum of passing cars. The pale glow of dawn filtered through the faded curtains, casting long shadows across the cluttered room. Her phone lay silent in her palm. No missed call notifications, no messages. She had tried calling her father again last night, hoping for some reassurance, some word to ease the knot tightening in her chest. But all she got was silence, cold and unyielding. Her suitcase rested open beside her, contents half unpacked in exhausted haste. As she rifled through the clutter, the worn edges of the manila envelope caught her eye. It was damp and slightly creased, but still intact, her grandmother's handwriting on the front, precise and deliberate. Residential transfer, Carter Holdings. Morgan traced the letters with her finger, the weight of it grounding her amid the swirl of doubt and exhaustion. Beneath the envelope, tucked between old receipts and torn receipts, she found a folded note on thick cream paper. Her breath hitched as she unfolded it. The ink was shaky, but unmistakably her grandmother's. "Home is yours when you stand tall." That simple phrase wrapped around her heart like a lifeline, stirring a quiet resolve to resist the easy defeat she'd been flirting with. She stared out at the cracked motel window toward the distant city skyline, where the first rays of sunlight glinted off the tallest buildings. Could she really turn away now? Walk away from the legacy and the fight for everything that she'd worked toward, just because the world wanted to mock her humility and drag her down? The thought burned bitterly. Her phone buzzed, a message this time, from an unknown number. It was brief, but clear. I overheard the argument. You have a chance. Don't lose hope. No name, no signature, but it was enough. Someone had noticed more than just the surface humiliation. Someone might be on her side. The motel's stale air felt less suffocating now. Morgan folded the note carefully, slid it back into the envelope, and zipped up her suitcase. As she stood, she shrugged off her yellow raincoat, wringing out the damp fabric with slow breaths. She knew what she had to do next. The road back to Oak Ridge would be long, but Morgan's steps were steadier this time. Despite the fear and the cold discomfort of the night, she carried within her a spark. Small, fragile, but fiercely real. She wasn't done. Not yet. Morgan locked the motel door behind her and glanced back once, the sun rising fully now, promising a new day. It was time to face the house, the family, and the moment that could finally change everything. The morning mist hung low over the sprawling Oak Ridge grounds, curling around the ancient oaks like a pale shroud. Morgan stood alone on the stone steps, the chill seeping through her worn yellow raincoat, its fabric stiff and damp from the early dew. Her breath came out in soft clouds as she peered through the tall window to the warmth inside. Laughter floated out, with the scent of fresh coffee and sizzling bacon, the unmistakable sounds of a family breakfast she was not invited to join. Inside, the long mahogany table was polished to a mirror finish, sunlight catching the gleam off crystal glasses and silverware arranged with pristine precision. Tessa was there, reclining with an effortless smile, surrounded by friends in crisp dresses and tailored suits. Her eyes flicked toward the window as Morgan appeared, and a slow, knowing smirk spread across her face, sharp and cold. It was the silent announcement, "You don't belong." Morgan's fingers curled tightly around the strap of her faded leather handbag. In one pocket rested her phone, which buzzed softly against the wooden step. She pulled it out, eyes scanning the screen, a calendar alert, a reminder for the 9 a.m. appointment with Miss Hargrove, the estate attorney who had been corresponding with Morgan's grandmother for months now. It was the pivotal moment, one that had been quietly mapped out in endless letters and sealed envelopes, away from the public eye and whispered gossip. The documents Morgan carried detailed the terms set by her grandmother, a clause stipulating the transfer of Oak Ridge to Morgan upon her 25th birthday. That birthday was today. Despite the thrum of her heart, a fragile knot of fear twisted in her stomach. The appointment was scheduled for an hour from now. But to the eyes of the social circle behind the glass, Morgan was still the unwelcome ghost haunting the edges of their perfect afternoon. The weight of the yellow coat felt heavier as she pulled it tighter, a shield against the cold glances and a symbol of all she had endured. Her gaze traced the elegant, winding path that led to the estate's front door, the same door that now barred her way. Yet beyond it was the law, impartial and unyielding, waiting in the quiet room where Miss Hargrove would untangle the past's knots and reveal the future. Morgan's pulse synced with the ticking of the antique clock inside, the seconds stretching taut like the fragile promise hidden in the envelope she kept close. She inhaled the damp, earthy air, letting it steady her racing thoughts. One glance back through the window caught Tessa's narrowed eyes behind a shimmering glass, the smirk lingering like a shadow. But Morgan's resolve hardened. This day held more than petty judgments and whispered exclusion. It held the chance to claim her rightful place. Whatever followed in the next moments would not be dictated by old grudges or shattered appearances. The meeting awaited, and with it, the possibility of finally stepping fully into the life she deserved. A house might still reject her now, but the law recognized her claim. And that recognition would echo far beyond the walls of Oak Ridge. When dignity finally speaks, who tends to listen in your world? Morgan's fingers trembled slightly as she stood beneath the towering pillars at Oak Ridge's grand entrance, watching for the approach of Miss Hargrove. The estate attorney arrived on the dot, her well-worn leather briefcase swinging from one hand, and a gentle smile greeting Morgan like an old friend. Let's get this sorted, Miss Hargrove said warmly, motioning toward the drawing room where polished mahogany panels reflected the morning light. Inside, Morgan set her damp yellow coat on a carved chair, unfolding the thick manila envelope and spreading its contents on the gleaming table. The documents lay crisp and official. A transfer agreement, neatly typed but bearing the unmistakable scrawl of her grandmother's signature across the bottom. Red ink initials confirming its authenticity. Alongside was a notarized affidavit, signed in the presence of Mrs. Delaney, which Miss Hargrove pulled from her briefcase like a talisman. This clause is the key, Miss Hargrove explained gently, pointing with a slender finger. Upon your 25th birthday, today, ownership of Oak Ridge transfers to you. Unless the claim is asserted before noon, the property defaults to your half-sister, Tessa. Her voice was measured but firm, the legal precision cutting through the tangled emotions Morgan had wrestled with since last night. Morgan's heart hammered as the weight of those words settled over her. The tight deadline made everything real, the slipping moments before lost opportunity. The gravity wasn't just in the paper, but in the consequence. If she faltered, the family legacy, the home that symbolized all she believed she deserved, would be gone from her grasp forever. We're not just talking documents here, Miss Hargrove added, folding the papers with care. It's about standing up when no one else believes you can. I've seen too many cases like this where timing is everything. Morgan nodded, swallowing hard, feeling the flood of late nights and double shifts, the relentless doubts, compress into a single moment of clarity. She wasn't just fighting her sister, or the whispers of social circles. She was reaching for respect, for her grandmother's wishes, for herself. Outside the window, sunlight filtered through fluttering leaves, casting shifting shadows on the garden path. Mrs. Delaney's face appeared briefly at the door, her expression steady, an unspoken promise of support. Morgan's breath caught. She wasn't alone. The risk was high, but retreat wasn't an option. If she lost this claim, Oak Ridge wouldn't be just a house slipping away. It would be the erasure of her family's history and her hard-won identity. Miss Hargrove glanced at her watch. You have until noon. I'll be by your side every step. Morgan folded the papers, her grip steady now, a flicker of determination lighting her eyes. The stage was set, and whatever came next, she intended to meet it head-on. Oak Ridge was more than walls and whispers. It was her birthright, and today she would fight to claim it. The staircase groaned under the soft footsteps of Tessa and her entourage as they descended, their voices a mix of curiosity and thinly veiled hostility. The warm light of the grand living room spilled out, glinting off chandeliers and polished wood, illuminating faces that had once dismissed Morgan as a mere shadow beneath their world. Now, they gathered with cautious interest as Miss Hargrove stepped forward, her presence commanding attention as she opened a leather-bound folder and cleared her throat. "Ladies and gentlemen," Miss Hargrove began, her voice steady, echoing slightly in the ornate room. "Today, I have the formal honor to announce that the property of Oak Ridge officially transfers to Morgan Carter." She placed the notarized envelope on the center table, the seal unbroken, the authenticity undeniable. This follows the terms outlined in the estate documents, signed by Miss Hargrove, Carter's grandmother, and witnessed by Mrs. Delaney. The transfer takes effect as of Morgan's 25th birthday, which is today. A hush fell. Even the soft rustling of fabric seemed loud amid the stunned silence. Tessa's cheeks flushed a deep crimson, her confident posture faltering as she stared at the papers. "Wait, this can't be. I wasn't notified?" Her voice trembled, thin threads of panic weaving beneath the surface. Hargrove's eyes met Tessa's without a trace of hesitation. The transfer was legally established months ago, with all required documentation filed and notarized. Your sister has fulfilled every legal responsibility to claim her inheritance. Morgan's breath steadied. The edges of the yellow raincoat she wore caught the light as she stepped forward, fingers curling gently around the cool metal of the house keys Miss Hargrove handed her. The weight of the keys was more than physical, it was the tangible symbol of a battle hard won through perseverance and quiet strength. Around her, the room shifted, Faces once smug now registered respect or reluctant acknowledgement. Some guests exchanged uneasy glances. Others avoided Morgan's steady gaze. Even Chase, Tessa's boyfriend, shifted uncomfortably, the bravado fading. Tessa faltered again, her voice barely above a whisper. I didn't know all this was in motion." For a brief moment, her mask cracked, revealing the pressure she'd been under, a mix of entitlement and fear. Morgan caught the flicker, a subtle reminder that beneath arrogance lay vulnerabilities she had overlooked before. Mrs. Delaney stood near the doorway, watching silently with a quiet pride that Morgan felt coursing through her veins. This victory wasn't just legal, it was a rebuke of scorn and dismissal. The room's energy changed as the reality settled in. Morgan Carter was no longer the overlooked half-sister. She was the rightful owner of Oak Ridge. Miss Hargrove closed her folder gently. "Morgan, congratulations. May Oak Ridge now be a home where you find not just a legacy, but peace." As the gathering dispersed, the tension dissolved into whispers and tentative smiles. Morgan's gaze lingered on the staircase, where Tessa retreated with measured steps, a reluctant acknowledgement in her eyes. When dignity finally speaks, who tends to listen in your world? Morgan stood in the formal living room, her fingers resting lightly on the stack of signed documents that had just been returned to her by Miss Hargrove. The parchment bore the official stamps and signatures that made her claim to Oak Ridge indisputable. She met Tessa's eyes across the room, steady and unwavering. The quiet strength in her gaze, a stark contrast to the flicker of uncertainty now clouding her sister's face. "Please respect this home," Morgan said calmly, voice firm without edge. "As I intend to." She could feel the weight of every eye in the room, the guests, once eager to dismiss her, now watching with a mixture of surprise and tentative respect. She unfolded the papers, allowing the clear truth of her legal ownership to rest visibly on the polished table. Tessa opened her mouth to argue, but only a breathless hesitation came out. The confidence that had carried her through so many social circles began to crumble as she realized the fight was over. Chase shifted uncomfortably at her side, avoiding Morgan's gaze, the bravado drained from his posture. Mrs. Delaney, standing quietly near the fireplace, stepped forward, offering a nod toward Morgan. "Everything here is as Miss Carter says," she confirmed softly, her loyalty a shield that bolstered Morgan's claim. This small but powerful endorsement sent a ripple through the room. The skeptical whispers faded. Caught off guard, Tessa muttered a shaky "I'm sorry," gathering her things with hurried steps, retreating from the space that Morgan now held firmly as hers. The guests, once doubtful, now exchanged approving glances, their demeanor shifting to acknowledgement. Miss Hargrove smiled warmly at Morgan. "You've done well," she said, extending sincere congratulations. The room's atmosphere lightened, the air charged with the fairness finally restored. Morgan exhaled deeply, not from relief alone, but from a growing sense of belonging she had never expected in this place. The victory wasn't just about property. It was about reclaiming her space, her dignity, and the respect she had earned through perseverance. As the last of the guests quietly dispersed, some nodding toward her with new regard, Morgan felt the quiet promise of a fresh start settle over Oak Ridge. This home, once a symbol of exclusion, was now hers to nurture and redefine, brick by brick, step by step. The journey had been long and painful, but in this moment she was irrevocably claimed by justice and by the quiet power of standing tall. Morgan settled onto the cool stone steps outside Oak Ridge, her yellow coat resting softly against the morning sun's gentle warmth. Around her, the sprawling gardens stirred awake, dewdrops shimmering on early blooms, birds calling to each other in a peaceful chorus that felt like a welcome after months of storm. Mrs. Delaney approached quietly, carrying 2 steaming mugs of tea, the herbal scent weaving through the fresh air. Morgan accepted the cup with a grateful smile, a warmth of balm against the cool breeze. She glanced down to see a neighborhood cat, sleek with mottled fur, slipping out from the shadow of a rosebush to curl up beside her. The cat's calm presence echoed the stillness Morgan craved, an unspoken symbol of belonging, unassuming and steady. "This place," Morgan began softly, her voice threaded with thoughtful calm, "was never just about walls or inheritance. It's about what we bring to it, the kindness we give, the courage to be ourselves when the world doubts us. That's where true belonging lies." She looked at Mrs. Delaney, eyes warm with newfound trust and friendship. "Thank you for standing by me." Mrs. Delaney nodded, her weathered face breaking into a gentle smile. "Homes are made by the people who fill them, not the people who claim them." Her words settled over Morgan like a steady foundation. Morgan let the cat nuzzle her hand, feeling the ripple of its soft purrs beneath her fingers. It felt like a quiet echo of the first lonely steps she had taken here, like a promise that those moments of isolation had led her exactly where she needed to be. The world beyond Oak Ridge felt different now, not just because the house was hers, but because she had learned the deeper truth, that dignity and worth come from rising above the judgments and finding strength within. And in that strength, there was the space to welcome others, to build something new. As the morning light spilled across the lawn, Morgan felt ready, not just to live in Oak Ridge, but to transform it with kindness, humility, and the enduring power of perseverance. A new chapter was beginning, and with it, a home that welcomed all who sought more than just a roof, but a place to stand tall. If a moment like this ever hit close to home, I'd love to hear how you found your way forward. If this story resonated with you, please hit that subscribe button. See you in our next story.